The key in what you said in that question, I think, is simply the word life. Chi cerca lo stile trova la morte. Chi cerca la vita trova lo stile. That's the E equals MC squared of storytelling, I think.
Good morning, Locarno. And thank you once again for being here, so many of you, for this conversation with our Pardo d'Onore, Alexander Payne. And therefore it is with a great pleasure that I ask you to welcome Alexander Payne. Today we celebrate an extraordinary filmmaker, a filmmaker who is a refined cinephile and an accomplished filmmaker on its own, someone that speaks cinema, someone that thinks cinema, someone that moves from the legacy of classic Hollywood filmmaker over to the best decade in American filmmaking, the 70s, and who has shaped a unique body of work. A body of work that has stood the test of time and has always tried to go beyond its previous results in a very humble and respectful way to the audience while gaining the hearts of spectators, viewers, all over the world. These are not compliments for a filmmaker, because since his very first film, Citizen Root, up to The Holdovers, we have seen the evolution of a unique artist. An artist who is not only a filmmaker, he's an incredibly talented writer who also manages to evoke, conjure out of his actors extraordinary performances. What we celebrate today here is the true magistral qualities of American filmmaking. If there is something that is remotely linked, possibly to link to the idea of American filmmaker, I truly believe it is Alexander Payne. And to quote François Truffaut when he's thinking une certaine idée du cinéma, I think that Alexander Payne is une certaine idée du cinéma américain. So this is why we are... And I have to say, Alexander is also an extremely eloquent film lover. I had the pleasure of listening to him in another festival speaking about Michael Curtiz' Breaking Point, and that was extremely illuminating in a way of how you can still make the so-called films from the past relevant in today's larger scheme of things. And therefore, if you allow me, I would begin with the very first question. I know it sounds a bit inevitable, but I would love to ask you, when did you become aware of cinema as a kid, child, adolescent, teenager? So what was it that made you fall in love with cinema and think, oh, this is something that I would like to try, this is something that I want to do?
First of all, good morning to everyone. Thank you for coming, and thank you for that really beautiful introduction. You know, they say, God, please make me the person my dog thinks I am. So I was just thinking, God, please make me the person Jonah says I am. Let's see. I can't remember not loving movies. I really had the fever from when I was, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years old. And my mother was a great film goer. My older brothers were great film goers. And also in the house, we had a not even Super 8, but regular 8 projector. And it was my great joy early on simply threading the projector and watching, very small, short versions of feature films. So I could go on from there. But you're making me think about one thing, though. Ruth Gordon, the actress Ruth Gordon, you know her from Rosemary's Baby and Harold and Maude, she wrote in her autobiography, if you want to be an actor or actress, you have to start when you're about 4. 5, you can still get in. 6 is a little bit too late. Why? Because you start training your parents to take you where you need to go. And in my case, that was true. That my parents learned early on if they just leave me at the movies and I'd be very happy.
So let's take a huge leap forward or a flash forward. Years later, after you had done already a lot of films, extraordinary fan of yours, or I don't know a fan, but someone like President Obama said that Election was his favorite film. I wanted to drop this question.
Favorite political film.
Favorite political film.
I met Barack Obama twice, and both times I said who I am, and he goes, "Oh, Election. That's my favorite political film."
So did you ever ask him how he became aware of that, or?
No, but he, as far as I know about him, he reads a lot and watches a lot of movies.
That's not something that can be said of this.
Don't get me started.
I mean, the way you work with the subject matter of your film, but also with the actors, you never shied away from looking at a more complex overall picture. I mean, Citizen Ruth, you tried to make things hard for yourself from the beginning by tackling a subject as complex as abortion, and still you managed to bring this extremely nuanced perspective on a subject that has indeed polarized views. So I would love to ask you, how do you start conceiving this from the writing point of view when you bring the written page to the actor? So there are some nuances in the working process. Can you elaborate on that?
About nuances, I can't. I don't know. That just comes with the process, I think. But when you start writing a screenplay, it has always to start simply with the characters. And like in that case, Citizen Ruth, it was my very first feature, and it was a satire, a comedy about not abortion, but abortion protesters. Against abortion and pro-choice. And my co-writer and I simply read an article in a newspaper which had more or less that same situation. We said, "Oh, that's a comedy," and started writing it. It's much more dangerous to start thinking, "Oh, let me make a movie set in a certain world and then concoct a story to fit that." No, we always start with the characters.
And why did you think, oh, that's a comedy? Because we know that, from what I understand from your work, that you think comedy is an extremely interesting way of working and trying to cast a light on different situations. So why did you think that's a comedy?
For me, comedy is the superior form because it provides distance from that view of human experience. It provides a delightful distance from what you're talking about. And also, Jim and we make comedies. We're always just interested in in humor. And we read that art. I don't want to go into detail about what that movie was about because we don't have much time. But it sparked in me the same. It suggested a movie like Billy Wilder's Ace in the Hole. Again, you talk about cinephilia. I was thinking, oh, this is a little bit like Ace in the Hole. People are arguing about a certain thing, but not about the thing itself, only about their own points of view.
I see. And since we are here, could you also elaborate on how you write when you are writing with your. I mean, because we know that the screenplay is born out of different drafts, and how do you fine tune the screenplay when you go along?
Okay.
It's too technical.
Yeah, we could spend all 45 minutes talking about screenwriting process, but how do you write a screenplay? Oh my God. Well, I think one of the important things that a filmmaker searches for always, 24 hours a day, throughout his or her life, is that flash of an idea. That could be a movie. Oh, that could be a movie. And they don't, the really good ones, the golden ones, at least for me, don't come very often. And I think that's why I don't make more movies. The screenplay is what slows me down. Both the grasp of the idea, oh, that could be a movie. And then, of course, that's the 1% inspiration. Then you have the 99% perspiration, how long it takes to write a good screenplay.
Since you...
Again, I'm not giving very good answers to these questions today, I think.
No, but since you said that it takes you...
Yeah, but you keep writing. And also, screenwriting isn't, writing. What it is you're imagining a movie. And when I speak to, young filmmakers or screenwriting classes or something like that, I say, don't think about it as writing, and don't think, well, I'm writing now, but I'm not actually making a film yet. You are, the moment you sit down at the screen to say, first scene, you're making a movie, you're imagining a movie. And a screenplay is simply the written record of the imagination of a movie. And that's kind of how we approach it.
I don't want to insist too much on writing, but I still have to ask one thing. I mean, for the writing is perceived in many different ways by different filmmakers. Like for some, writing is excruciating, painful. For others, it's a very intimate moment that they would love to last forever. So how do you feel writing? Do you feel more...
Horrible. It's terrible. Horrible.
I figured as much.
But necessary, and when you finally get to those few moments where it feels good, but most of it is painful.
And
but it's the most important and most difficult part of filmmaking by far.
And since we are also speaking about painful, there's a number of projects that you worked on and they didn't get made, if I'm not mistaken. How does that happen when you work for such a long time on films that don't get made? And
actually, forgive me, that's not true. There's only one film that I worked on for a long time that didn't get made. Everything else I've ever written has gotten made.
Okay. Okay.
With all respect.
No. Because I wanted to ask about the Esquivel projects and
there were projects along the way that were developed. Maybe I had a different writer, but so anything that I have written always got made. Thank God.
From the very first films, we have worked with major actors that people would consider stars, but you have always refused this idea of working with stars because you thought these people are first and foremost artists, and I never wrote something thinking of a specific star, but working for an artist. And when we see the list of people you worked with, it's quite an impressive list. I mean, from the very beginning, Burt Reynolds, Tippi Hedren, and on and on and on. So how do you approach working with these people who usually come with also a large baggage of experience? And so,
in my experience, I haven't worked really with that many big movie stars. The big movie stars I've had were, what's his name? Jack Nicholson. Who's the one? Oh, Clooney, George Clooney. And Matt Damon. And those were like kind of the big ones. Burt Reynolds, when I had him, had been a big star, wasn't anymore. But it was kind of a interesting casting in that moment. My experience with the big ones, though, isn't any difficulty that the star brings. It's everyone's attitude around the star. Oh, let's wait before we call him. Oh, let's not bother him. Oh, gosh, will he work an extra 45 minutes if we need to? Just ask him. You know, it's really everyone's attitude around the star. I've had very good luck. The other thing, too, is you, before you cast anyone known, you call up other directors who have worked with him and say, what's it like to work with him? Oh, he doesn't remember his dialogue. Oh, he's good in the morning, but then starts drinking and isn't so good in the afternoon. You know, whatever the story is, and then you think, maybe we don't go there. Maybe we look for someone else. I was lucky enough. Sorry to name drop, but I was lucky enough to be friends with the great director Mike Nichols, and I asked him once about working with a star, and he said, that person has absolutely perfected his inability to learn dialogue.
Well, this looks like a line from one of your films. But still, there is a method to working with these people, because you, in other interviews, you mentioned how you worked with Jack Nicholson, going to visit him, and that about Schmidt, I mean, it's really one of his major performances, and at that point he didn't have to prove anything else, but still he managed to deliver something quite unique. So
yeah, well, Jack Nicholson specifically, okay, going back to Mike Nichols, I called up Mike Nichols and I said, I'm about to work with Jack Nicholson. What should I do? You've worked with him 3 or 4 times. He said, oh, that's simple, my boy. Just tell him the truth. Don't try to do any tricks or games around him, because he'll smell it on you and lose respect for you. So that was true. What I was being given was permission to be myself around him, around this great star. And working with him specifically, he simply wanted me to go to his house once a week before we shot for months and talk. Not even about the film, not about anything, just to get to know each other and develop a kind of communication shorthand between us. And then one day, finally, I came over and I was about to open the door. He said, don't open that door. I heard the voice. Okay, now open the door. I opened the door, and there he was, dressed as Schmidt, with the right old man sweater and the hair combed over like this. And he said, what do you think? And I said, I like it.
So basically it was already a rehearsal that you were going to
without knowing it. But let me just say one last thing about working with stars. One thing is star, the other thing is actor. Working with a truly great actor, it makes you a better director, because then it forces the young director to be very precise with his or her directions. Because in the case of Nicholson, no matter what I would say, he would do exactly that, like driving a precision Ferrari. You know, you move the wheel a little bit this way and it goes that way. And sometimes I would catch myself, he would do something in a take that wasn't quite right, and I would think, oh, I didn't say it correctly. And then I'd say, cut, Mr. Nicholson, I'm so sorry. I said this, but I see now that I really meant that. No problem. And then he does that.
I mean, this is the hard way of learning to direct actors while working with stars of, I mean, sorry.
It was a great education. Great, great, great education.
But how do you, I mean, I can imagine, is it a bit nerve-wracking when you are like starting out and you have this person that carries all this kind of weight, but also other actors, and that they can say, oh, you are, I mean, is it sometimes also confrontational, or
never
very respectful?
Never.
Always respectful.
No, again, I've been lucky enough to cast good ones, kind ones. And also, Nicholson, at that point in his life, to be with me, it was my 3rd film, he's, simply by saying yes, he's accepting to work with me. You know, he's giving me his trust and his confidence. And, you know, he didn't have to say yes. And the good ones want to be directed. If you don't give, they want direction. They need to know, what movie am I in? And the best actors, the best stars, not only, you know, there's this attitude of, well, like Kazan, you have to study the actor and know what to tell him or her, what to do, what psychological buttons to press, how he works. Yes, and it's also the job of the actor to study the director, to know what movie is being made and to conform him or herself to that vision. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. You can't be making different movies. You have to be making the same movie. And the greatest stars know that.
This is extremely interesting what you're saying, because all your film, you manage to create this space where the performances breathe within the frame and the setting that you create, and everything feels smooth and organic, and it manages to let the emotional truth of what is going on in the frame within the story to percolate, and it's something that it's quite unique. There is a distinct perception of time in your film that it feels that you never rush anything. Even when you just see the films, you feel that there is an understanding that things don't get rushed, which creates, in my opinion, the intimate quality of your films, that you somehow feel that there is a director that asks the question, please take your space within the story and be with these people. This is something that is quite unique.
But doesn't that define any good movie? Is it specific?
It is, but nowadays we don't see that much, you know?
What do you see in it? If I can understand what you're expressing, what do you see in other movies that doesn't do that?
When it's being rushed, when you jump from one situation to another situation, and instead of having an arc, a narrative arc, an emotional arc, you have situations, one situation from one situation that brings another situation, and you don't feel that the person moving from one point to another has actually experienced something. And after you see a lot of things, whatever, but you don't feel anything. So in your films, you could say less things happen, but you feel a lot more.
Okay, all right, I'm absorbing this, trying to understand. But what I hear from your question, Joanna, is one of the most important things that a director has to think about is rhythm. Rhythm. The older you get, I think the more experienced in filmmaking you get, the more you think about rhythm. And you're suggesting that some inferior films have a little concern for rhythm other than speed and keeping going, and faster is always better. But of course, I'm saying obvious things, forgive me. But you have to know when to slow things down and when to speed things up. It's musical. It's like a symphony. Andante, allegro non troppo, piano, piano. All of that applies to a film as well. Especially if you're trying to calibrate a combination of comic and emotional effects.
And let's get a bit closer to comedy. As you already stated, comedy for you is a very important element. But sometimes when I look at your film, I think that you are one of the directors that managed to reinvent for yourself the idea of the classic Italian comedies, meaning the elements of life and shaped into a complexity that is both funny but also melancholic, sometimes bitter, and all these different nuances. I mean, that's not an easy...
The key in what you said in that question, I think, is simply the word life. Chi cerca lo stile trova la morte. Chi cerca la vita trova lo stile. That's the E equals MC squared of storytelling, I think. Eduardo de Filippo said that. He who searches for style finds death. He who searches for life finds style. And in those Italian movies, for example, they're trying to capture life. And then style comes. And I think that's key.
And what were the Italian movies that shaped this way of thinking in you? I mean, those that stayed with you over all these years.
I think a big influence that Jim Taylor, my co-writer, and I reference a lot is I Soliti Ignoti. Big deal on Madonna Street. We like that one a lot. And then, of course, Il Sorpasso was a big influence on Sideways.
now we have spoken about live comedy actors. You have you worked a lot with your DOP, Fidon Papamichael, and you already said that if you look for style, you are not getting anywhere. But still, how do you work with a filmmaker, as a filmmaker with a DOP, like? Because you establish over the year like a kind of shorthand, and he understands how you work.
Right. Well, I need to have people around me who have versatile technical skills, obviously, but also a sense of humor and a sense of humanity. I mean, oftentimes, you know, at least in my case, and he's asking about Phaedon Papamichael, a Greek-German DP I've made 4 films with, and before him I worked with one DP named James Glennon, whose father, by the way, shot Stagecoach. He had been Burt Glennon. He had been raised in the business. I need funny people next to me, and I also need good judges of performance. You know, because often the actor does something, and I may not be sure what to think, and I'll say, "What did you think?" "I thought it was pretty good." Or in Citizen Ruth, sometimes you can see the camera moving because my DP was laughing while shooting. So I like that.
Wonderful. And have you ever considered to shoot something that you did not write?
Oh, I've done it already. I mean, I always rewrite at the end. Nebraska has a different, thank you for showing it, by the way. We projected it 2 days ago. I thought it looked pretty good. No, I had I watched the first half hour and I was like, oh, and it had some lessons for the next movie I'm about to make. Is a little bit of a second cousin to Nebraska, so I was happy to look at it again and say, oh, that was good. Oh, I could use that. Oh, but also the quality of the projection was so excellent. What was I going to say? What were we talking about?
Nebraska.
But I didn't write it.
Yeah,
I didn't write it. Nor did I write The Holdovers. I had the idea for it, and I found the writer, and of course I rewrite at the end, but I didn't write that either. I love it to direct something that someone else has written. I'm more interested in the act of directing than the act of writing.
And how did you, since you mentioned The Holdovers, which was a big success, how did you work with Paul Giamatti that does this tremendous performance, which is really poignant and heartfelt?
Paul Giamatti is the closest. So, approaching a career in film, you always think it would be so lovely to have an alter ego actor and make many films with that actor. You know, John Ford with John Wayne, or Marcello with Fellini, or Kurosawa with Toshiro Mifune. And I've never had that because somehow my screenplays haven't lent themselves to that. But the closest I've come somehow is Paul Giamatti in Sideways and in The Holdovers. We somehow, I mean, he's a really brilliant guy. He comes from a brilliant family. They're all professors. And somehow we have a very good, artistic, unspoken connection. We need to tell each other very, very little. It's very nice. The actor is always the most important vessel of tone. Like whatever tone you're trying to communicate in the film, you can do so with the lighting, with the music, very important, with the quality of the cinematography, whatever. But the most important, I just said it, the most important component of narrative cinema after the screenplay is the actor, the leading actor, because that's what the audience looks at. And that person or those people contain the tone of the film, and he understands my tone. All the time, completely serious and completely joking.
And do you rehearse a lot when you present this? No, not at all.
In general, in movies, you don't rehearse very much. In general.
And the reading of the screenplay? When they first you read with them, or you give them the screenplay and they read it and they come to you
there are a couple
with
of
suggestions? And
a couple of things. When you give them the screenplay, of course, everyone's read the screenplay. But I do like to have a read-through to gather as much of the cast together for 3-4 hours before shooting, really so they can get to know one another. And I invite the cinematographer, I even invite some of the technicians, the sound man, the gaffer who puts the lights, the key grip who puts the things in front of the lights, because they're all going to be working, we're all going to be working together on the set like a cliche word, like a family for those 10 weeks. And it's nice that they get to know one another a priori. It's also good to have, because I cast big stars sometimes, other professional actors, non-professional local actors, and non-actors. I do a lot of casting. That's a whole other realm of activity that my casting director and I do, is getting non-actors because they lend a lot of credibility to the film. But it's nice for the non-actors to have met the star at least once, so that when they meet again to shoot 6 weeks later, the non-actor is not freaked out. The non-actor can say, "Oh yes, I know George Clooney. We met 6 weeks ago. How you doing? Hi, yeah."
And what happens, let's say someone like Paul Giamatti comes to you and says, "Hey, Alex, I mean, I could say this like this, but maybe this could be rewritten like this." Are you the kind of director that says, "No, the written word on the page is what it is, you're being paid to say it exactly the way it is"? Or are you open to say, "You know what, this is a better idea, let's change it"? So how do you work with that?
I don't say you're being paid to. I'm not that.
No,
I'm not that rude. But it's the first. Yes, my main direction is really, please hit your mark and recite your dialogue exactly as written. I don't like improvisation.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, not that I'm against it or that I oppose it in the films of others or that I wouldn't enjoy working that way someday as a new experience. But no, I and the writers I've worked with, we spend a lot of time on that dialogue, and please say it exactly. But your question is a compliment, and I've had that question before. "Oh, the dialogue seems so natural and so real. Are they improvising?" That's the compliment.
No, I wasn't thinking that they are improvising. I was just, since sometimes actors bring forth their idea, their suggestions, like we could do this like this, because in my opinion, these characters goes from...
I had one, and I'll never work with them again. But I won't tell you, I'll tell you privately later.
Okay. I think that...
yeah, still makes me mad.
My question or the actor?
No, not you. No, never
okay,
you,
okay.
Jonah, never you, no.
So I think that maybe if you want, we can already, I mean, we can open to the floor. The lady here in the the second row there. Just wait a second for the microphone.
Good morning.
Hello. I'm a great fan of your movies, and it's a great pleasure to see you. Thank you very much. And you talked about directing famous stars, but in your movies, all young actors, and you said some amateurs, they all feel so impressive. I remember their acting, just so natural, and also not only natural, has a very presence and personalities. How do you direct young actors and amateurs?
Well, thank you for the compliment. Thank you very much. The oldest cliche is the truest, which is that 90%, maybe 95% of directing is simply casting. So before, whether from non-actors, I mean, really everyone, even stars, sometimes I make them come in and read. I need to choose. It's all about choosing. And sometimes finding those non-actors or the discoveries. It just takes a long, long time. You have to be willing to put a lot of time into casting and find those people. And the other thing is that I think one of the best skills a director should have, or director and those people around him or her, is the ability to recognize talent in others. You know, you have to be able to write a script, you have to be able to direct actors, you know, the editing, the music, all those components. But another super important component is recognizing talent in other people, having that eye. And fortunately, I have some skill at that or some talent at that, fortunately, and the people I work with have that as well. But it takes a lot of time. And when preparing a movie, official and expensive pre-production starts maybe 12 or 16 weeks before the film. I always wanted casting directors to start well in advance of that, casting and location scouting, so that you can, if you find someone, you can then bring him or her in for another audition and another audition and another audition, 3, 4, 5 times, to make sure we have good ones, good non-actors. That also, the other thing is that every audition too functions as a type of rehearsal. You know, you asked about rehearsal. So in a way, auditions are rehearsals, and it's the first bit of communication between actor and director about what that role should be. Yeah. We showed Nebraska the other day, and one of the things I'm proudest of in that film is the quality of the non-actors, the farmers. You can't get actors to play those people. You have to get the real people. And that took almost a year of putting, I said it then, so forgive me for repeating myself, putting ads in farm village newspapers, the local newspaper, putting ads on farm area radio, you know, where they say what the price of pigs is, the price of corn, the price of cattle that day, and a movie is shooting. Would you like to audition for it? But thanks for the question. And
Here? So,
hi, thank you so much, first of all, for your films. Sideways and The Holdovers are two of my favorite films and biggest inspirations as a writer. I was wondering, I think that something in your films that makes them feel so real is a clarity of purpose and confidence in who the characters are, but also what the story is. You know, it doesn't feel like it loses itself ever. And I wonder, having made some films, short films myself, if you have any advice on how to keep a clear head and keep focus on the thing that you're trying to make, kind of through writing, production, with all the external pressures, influences, and the kind of chaos of what making a film really is.
really, thank you for the question. Really tough question, because in a way the answer is contained in your question, which is, how do you stay focused? The answer is, you stay focused. Clearly, when you're alone writing, you're developing an intimate relationship with the story and the characters. And you have to keep that intimate relationship, that secret unspoken. I mean, that's the thing about film, isn't it? It's this big popular form with film festivals and Academy Awards, but where does it start? It starts with an artist whispering inside his or her heart, this could be a film. It's really, film is so interesting that it links the most intimate and secret longings or whisperings, sorry this sounds so corny, but with a huge public, expensive, ego-driven, backbiting, jealousy-inducing, world industry. So how do you maintain that? You simply do. Where I am conscious of protecting it is arriving every day on set and getting out of the car. It said that what's the hardest part of filmmaking? Getting out of the car, because you're afraid that day. And in American filmmaking, which is unnecessarily excessive, all the trucks, all the people, all the bearded men eating their breakfasts in the morning with their walkie-talkies, and And I think, I'm doing a love scene today. So I always fear that the means of production might interfere with the intimacy of what I'm shooting and of the intimacy of what I feel inside and want to get out, you know, keeping focused. So somehow, then on set, between action and cut, I mentally imagine that none of that is there. And even that I'm not there, that's simply the actors doing it, and I'm watching, invisible. That's where it hits me personally, is on set.
Hello, I loved your movies since about Schmidt, but this is another question. About recognizing talents, you'll be in few days the president of a jury of Venice. And how will you manage recognizing talents in other movies?
Well, thanks for the question. It's a little bit, you're making, though, a bit of a distinction, because I'm trying to recognize talent which maybe has not been recognized before for a movie, as opposed to, I mean, yes, she's referring to the fact that I'll be on the jury in Venice next week or in 2 weeks. They're all super talented filmmakers. I'm going to be looking, then it's going to be hard to distinguish between what do you give a prize to amid all of this talent? Oh my God, I'm intimidated by it.
Hi, my name's Andrew. I actually did a scene from Sideways in an acting class.
Which one?
Sideways.
Which scene did you do?
Oh, I think it's the one about the wine. They were talking about wine.
Right.
But it's so nice to be here, and what a great conversation this is going so far. And now
We still have time to wreck it.
I love comedy, okay? So there's no time, you can't wreck anything, to be honest with you. As an actor, and you've already talked about some things for actors. I was just wondering, what traits have you noticed that stand out for you when you work with actors and when you audition actors for parts in all the films that you've done? Thank you.
So in auditions, or what? Give him the microphone back for Giovanotto.
Well, in auditions and on set as well. So, like, because, I guess it's two different questions maybe, because there's the auditions, and then the others.
Yeah, okay. So it's the same. It's in an audition or on the set, you want actors who are oblivious to anything other than what they're doing as actors. That they're completely undistracted. You talk about focus, completely not distracted by the fact that it's an audition, the fact that there's a camera and lights and 50 people around them, but they simply can look at the other actor or look at the camera and, a cliche, but it's true, tell the truth. So, I don't know. And then I just want talented ones. Ones who can just do it. It's a hard question to answer, man, with all respect.
Hi, thank you for your time. So I remember in an introduction you did for El Sorpaso, you mentioned this idea of sloppy borders. As you just said before, the film has been an inspiration for you, and so I'm wondering if you can speak more about that specific concept in particular, how it's been instilled in your work, and I guess what I'm asking more broadly is how do you go about creating these types of unforgettable and significant characters or events when there's limited screen time and they lie on the fringes of your central story? Thank you.
Next. I think when I did the introduction for Il Sorpaso for a DVD release, Sloppy Borders. Yeah, I think I've never thought about that since then. I think, when you get your pictures made in the old days at the photo company, do you want the hard outside or the sloppy borders, the black line. And somehow when I was watching Il Sorpaso, I thought that Rizzi had kind of sloppy borders, the feeling of one scene kind of bled into the next scene, and then the feeling of that scene kind of bled in the scene after that. I think it was kind of unique to that movie, but I'd have to see it again. And how else do I do what?
When you have a character that's only going to be in one scene, or they kind of lie really on the margins of what your central plot is,
Right.
you have a talent of really creating those moments to be significant. How do
Thank
do
you for that. That I consider a compliment. So let me quote two people. Antonioni used to say something which is valuable for all filmmakers, which is a film, the quality of a film often depends on lavishing attention on secondary and tertiary characters. So to create moments in a film where you give something to do to a side character to suggest the world, or I think that was in Il Sorpasso too. You see people, you make a little scene between people you don't know what they're doing at the beginning of a new location, and then pan to your principal actor coming up. It gives delight to that world. It suggests the world that your protagonists are entering, and it's funny. And also I remember when I was making Sideways, Paul Giamatti, who until then had not really, maybe once before, been the lead in a film. And about 2 or 3 weeks into making the film, he said, "This is so much easier than only playing for 1 or 2 days. It's so much easier to be the lead in a film." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I have many opportunities to suggest who this person is. When I'm cast for one scene, I have to think, how can I suggest who this person is with 2 lines or 3 lines?" So just be aware of it. If you're a filmmaker yourself, it's simply something you're aware of. But I got to tell you, my casting team and I put as much time into casting side characters as we do into the lead.
Yes. The lady with the glasses on the... Yeah, you. Yeah.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. I was wondering what you could tell us about your next project.
I start shooting in February in Denmark, and it'll be my first, not only first all-European production, but the first time I'm directing in a language I don't speak. Yeah. It's just it's not in Copenhagen. It's a little bit, I said it a few minutes ago, it's a little bit like my film Nebraska. Repressed older people in a forgotten agricultural village somewhere, in this case out in Jutland in Denmark.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much for being here and also for your movies. I was wondering, how do you manage to combine comedy and drama in the way you do? Because, for example, during the Nebraska and the Descendants scene, I laughed for 2 hours during the whole movie, but at the same time, I felt a lot of motion, a lot of different motion, and when I left the theater, I felt something about nostalgia. So I was wondering, how do you manage to do it? I don't know if it's something about directing.
The question is kind of impossible to answer. How do you do it? I don't know. If I do it, I simply do. That's how it comes out. I think also, I've had, like The Descendants has a pretty dramatic story, but you direct it somehow like it's a comedy. Even Jafar's film last night, it's pretty funny. And it could have, I said to my companion, I said, this is so great, and if you had wanted to, he could have even directed it more like a comedy.
Yeah,
because it's a pretty preposterous situation, and then of course it gets very serious, it is, but there was a way of directing that even more like a comedy. These hapless people like getting into this van, and here's this poor guy in the box in the back, and
It's about not knowing what the truth is, and how it makes your decisions unclear, and how you try to find a focus where there is none, and so on. And but I also thought that Jafar's film was quite funny in a very dark way.
Correct, right, super dark.
morning, Alexander. It's quite a pleasure having you here, sharing this moment. Thank you for your time. I think you are one of the most inspiring American contemporary films director, along Wes Anderson, James Gray, and of course you. I would like to ask you about your influence. You mentioned in the screening of Nebraska, the very wonderful screening, you mentioned La Tierra Trema, the Visconti, you mentioned Osu, but I think, in my humble opinion, that your taste about ordinary people celebrating single moments of their lives is not difficult to me, thinking on American classics like Our Daily Bread, King's Vidor, or Daily Bread, King's Vidor, Tobacco Road, John Ford. I don't remember the title of Frank Capra. You Can Take It With You. You Can Take It With You. That sort of thing. And my question is, you have in mind all your encyclopedic of film watching, because you are a profound cinephile of the world, but American film also. You have in mind that films, and I thought watching a beautiful documentary here in Locarno about Jack Kerouac, about the philosophy of going on the road, and I was watching Nebraska the other day, and I was thinking, would Alexander Payne is thinking on Jack Kerouac philosophy, putting Woody on the road, in the fact that I think he knows he won't collect his $1 million, but he loves go to the road as an end, as a goal on itself. I would like to know about this. Thank you very much.
This is more a comment than a question, like how do you relate to the classics? You mentioned also Tobacco Road by John Ford, and then this documentary.
Which John Ford movie did you say?
Tobacco Road.
Oh, I've never seen it. Oh, I know what it's about. No, I know the book and everything, yeah. But, well, in generally, if I can extract a simple question from your answer, if you're a cinephile, how much are you thinking about old movies while making your own? And the answer really is not very much, because in the moment of being on set and everyone's looking at you what to do, and you feel really stupid for a few minutes before you finally figure out it and tell them what to do, no one can help you. You're on your own. I mean, yes, the films you've seen do become a kind of mental spice rack of possibilities. I could do this, or every once in a while I'll consciously steal a shot. But not very much. I also want to do it what I'm doing for the first time. I'm not trying to be John Ford. I'm not trying to be Frank Capra. I can only be, all I can do is try to be Alexander Payne in that moment.
Which is a lot.
Well.
Question in the back there.
Thank you for your films. Thank you for giving us Sideways. And I think the Sideways works really great because of the ensemble you put together. When I tell to friends about Sideways, the character of Jack doesn't seem to fit in that group of people. Were there moments during the filmmaking where you felt like this character doesn't fit in this film, this project will not work?
No.
So,
Thomas Hayden Church playing Jack, no, I cast him very, very consciously, knowing that he was kind of a wild guy. Yeah. Yeah. And he gave me what I wanted. It wasn't always easy with him, but he gave me, a lot of gifts.
We have time for one last question. It goes there. Yeah.
Hello, Alexander. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your films. They're a great inspiration. You had spoken about casting. You had spoken about screenwriting. So as an editor, I wanted to ask about editing. I know some directors like to be in the room with the editors. Some like to be completely removed. So what is your relationship to the editing process?
I'm there every single moment.
Okay.
Oh, come find. We can talk afterwards, but I'm there every single moment. I mean, there's some directors who stop by the editing room once a week. You know, how's it going? Show me some scenes, and then make comments and leave again. And I'm not trained that way. I mean, I'm trained at film school where I cut my own stuff, and then I don't even watch a what they call an assembly, or, you know, because by the time the director has finished and takes a 2-week vacation and then comes to the cutting room, typically the editor has a very, very rough version of the film ready to screen. I don't even watch that anymore because it's extremely depressing. It's so terrible that I want to kill the editor first and then kill myself. You know, I say it's like scrambled eggs. It's just broken eggs in a bowl right now. It's not the omelet. And what gives me hope in the editing room is, I say this to the editor and myself, I said, every day we work, we make the film less terrible. Because it's really, a movie is really terrible until it's finally good. I mean, it's awful. And my other definition of editing is the ongoing process of disguising how bad the movie really is. You know?
Thank you very much for this wonderful conversation, extremely stimulating. Emmanuel Deona, I'm a freelance journalist from Geneva. Speaking about inspiration and the work on writing, editing, you wrote an introduction to the edited book of the wonderful retrospective that we had the pleasure to see during the
post-war
festival.
British cinema, yes.
Yes, and I was wondering what is so important in your eyes in this cinema? Is it because there is something in the British psyche that is maybe so close to your way of apprehending life and acting? I mean, all that has to do with humor and maybe
I'm going to interrupt you.
irony, black humor, grotesque, and also the popular, the need to go and see what people feel, experience, think, and to kind of give them credit for what they are.
Well, first of all, thank you for recognizing how wonderful this retrospective of post-war British cinema has been at this festival. What a huge, and I would say important contribution to film scholarship this has been, because I really can't answer your questions because I wrote the preface to Asan's book, but it doesn't mean I've seen all those movies. In fact, I say I'm so grateful to him for choosing the movies that we who are interested in that period of cinema could see. And, you know, looking at the list, I had seen maybe 25% of them. But I was so great, and I am so grateful to him for defining, through the series of articles he elicited, defining that period, at least for me, in a clearer way. And what I say in that preface is that often film buffs know Italian, Japanese, French, and American cinema to some strong degree. But British cinema, oh yeah, the Ealing comedies, yeah, the Archers, yeah, J. Arthur Rank, yes, Michael Powell, yes, David Lean, but really to have a grasp on what those, as he defined, those 15 years were like, it's a great, at least to me, in terms of my learning, a great contribution. I wish I had been able to be here for the entire festival.
We
because
would have been so happy to have you.
If you read that book and watch those 40 movies, it would have been like taking a complex, a really intense graduate university class on post-war British cinema. So I'm going to continue. I'm seeing my last one tonight at 10. I'm all right, Jack. But by the time I leave, I will have seen about 8. I've only been here 3 or 4 days.
But we have also Asan at the back, so...
Oh, hello.
Thank you. Thanks for your kind words.
Applause to you, my friend. Just excellent job.
So thank you, Alexander, for
Oh,
this.
thanks. This was great.
Yeah. And thank you for being here with us today. Thank you all for your wonderful questions. Thank you for your generosity. It's been an honor, Alexander.